All right, well, let's go to the liability insurance.
Mike, can you scroll to, give me a second, Mike. $171 is the action sheet, Mike. 172 is the document, but Ms. Matana, myself, Mr. Durkin have met with 3 different insurance brokers, and our liability insurance cooperative is going through some hardships and probably will be folding. And so the district would need to pick a new broker for its liability insurance. And so Chris has been doing the yeoman's work on this, so I'll let her provide her summary.
Sure. So I want to start by recognizing that this is a lot of information to take in. And so this is certainly a first read, and the purpose is to educate the board kind of as to where we are right now in the process. So we're currently a part of ISIC, which is the Illinois School Insurance Cooperative. This is for our liability insurance. The members have certainly been decreasing over the years. This year we have 8 members in the cooperative. Next year 2 have already said that they would be leaving, so we have 6. So I do not foresee a future in this cooperative. And so as a result, we've been exploring our options as Dr. Spinkus has expressed. And so there really are 2 different options for the district, and then within that there's some other choices that need to be made eventually. So the 2 real differences are going with a different cooperative or going directly with a broker. So certainly there are benefits for each. You know, going with a cooperative, you certainly have some stability in costs and coverage because that's spread out over multiple schools. You have some potential equity and returns from leftover claim funds. And then you have some loss control, which helps insulate the district from market conditions when that fluctuates. The benefits of choosing to work directly with a broker include choosing coverage that meets the needs directly of the district, as opposed to you know, being locked into what the cooperative has to offer, and that can also help save some money for the district as well. So you know, the next page is really a summary over the 3 different options. So we have 2 cooperatives, which I'll talk about in a minute, but you'll see the first one is the School Suburban Cooperative Insurance Pool. As you know, education likes acronyms, so this pool is called SKIP. The next pool is called CLIC, and then the third option would be going directly with a broker, which would be Alliant. And so, you know, I put this chart together just to kind of summarize the different coverage options that are available by each of the different options for the district. I don't want to go over those in detail. Ultimately, you can see the Suburban Cooperative Insurance Pool has slightly less coverage. I will say, though, that the next pool, CLIC, while it has more coverage, hasn't gone out to the market to get a renewal since the liability insurance market has kind of turned. So I do anticipate those limits lowering a little bit. And then last, with Alliant, it's really hard to put together something because it's kind of an a la carte menu, and you can choose the coverage that fits best for the district. So you can see, you know, the two cooperatives are pretty similar in terms of coverage. You know, the second pool certainly has higher coverage right now. I don't know if that will last. On the next page, I just highlighted some additional information about each of the 3 different options. So the SKIP pool, the first pool option, has 64 members. This pool is managed by Gallagher. This coverage does not include student accident liability coverage, which we would need, and law enforcement coverage. It does include firearms, so it includes part of the coverage that we need. And if you look at CLIC, this cooperative is bigger. It has 185 members. It's also managed by Gallagher. And so why this is important is ultimately we will need to choose one cooperative over the other if we decide to go the cooperative route, as Gallagher won't give us an estimate on both cooperatives. We'll have to choose one or the other. And so you can see, you know, they also have, like the other cooperative, they also have GCN, which is Global Compliance Network, which is training modules that we use, and some other benefits as well. And then lastly is Alliant, and that's an option to go directly with a broker. They have several clients that are schools, some of which are CPS and Elgin School District U46, which are some of the two biggest districts in the state. Certainly they have a lot of market leverage and are able, again, like I said, to tailor the coverage to the district's needs. I think really what's important to stress is that all of these options are going to be cheaper and more expansive than the district's current coverage. So regardless of which option we choose, we can't go wrong in my opinion, because they're all going to cost less and we're going to get more coverage. Ultimately, the board will need to make a decision, or will need to have some direction for the board no later than July, because I do have to let the cooperative know at that point, if the cooperative is not folding, that we'll be going in a different direction. That is, a general summary. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have now. But as I said before, this is a lot of information, and I'm happy to answer any questions that may be submitted before the June board meeting as well.
Kristen, just to touch the student accident liability, which is required by the state, does our current cooperative provide that?
Our current cooperative does provide that, yes.
And
our current cooperative does not provide law enforcement coverage. That costs us roughly, I believe, $2,500 a year for the law enforcement coverage for our school safety liaison officer.
The collective liability, the CLIC cooperative, do they provide student accident insurance?
They do.
And what about the law enforcement?
They do as well.
So we would not need to buy anything separate if we went with CLIC?
We would not. Good.
Yeah, and those coverages are readily available, whether it be if the cooperative doesn't necessarily provide them, those are still items that you can available for purchase, and there seem to be pretty reasonable costs. One thing to think about, the way our industry works, I'm in the insurance industry, and so the way it works is that whenever there's a big disaster, some type of accident, what have you, back 9/11, there's always going to be litigation. So currently with COVID, there's going to be a lot of litigation. There already is in the industry, and over what should or should not be covered. Policies may have exclusions or may not, or they may be vague, what they will or will not cover. But we also got to remember that there's a lot of rumblings going around in different states and federally on whether there ought to be a COVID insurance backstop to provide to force insurance companies to provide coverage for COVID-related claims. Now, where am I going with this? Well, I'm not advocating one way or the other, but something to think about is if we're in a cooperative. My understanding is that we're probably going to have to be committed for 2 to 3 years. And the litigation is going to be ongoing, and eventually it could hit school districts. If somebody contracts COVID, you could see a multitude of suits. I think plaintiff attorneys are looking at this in a lot of different ways, and there's opportunity there. So by being in a co-op, if a plaintiff attorney finds a weakness, and there's state or federal legislation that's passed that forces insurance companies, co-ops, what have you, to make payments for COVID-related claims, then it could be a huge hit, for any co-op or any insurance company. Whereas if you're out on your own, you may not be affected by others. So, we have a lot more to look at. There's pros and cons on going both with a co-op or just going straight through a broker. But I thank Kristen for doing all the legwork on this. She did a great job. But insurance can be very confusing. So, any questions you have, please let us know.
So do we need to set up some kind of subcommittee on this?
You're muted, Wes.
So I'm just saying, not really because I looked at this in the finance committee, but maybe we need to get Bill and another board member to work with Kristen on how they want to advise to go forward with this.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
If Deanna has some time, she has some experience with doing insurance proposals and quotes for the county. So she could serve on that advisory council with Kristen and myself.
And has her hand up.
That wasn't a hand up to volunteer, just so we're clear. I guess this is a lot of information, and I think you guys did a good job summarizing it. Are there other co-op options that are out there? I guess my first thought is the fact that they both go through Gallagher is problematic, and if they won't quote outside of a selection. So is there another option on the co-op end?
There is. It's Illinois County's Risk Management Trust. And it's a pool of school districts and then also municipalities. But my understanding of this is that they have a silo on its own for school districts. So I'd say it appears to be similar to what the Gallagher offerings can be.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that, I believe that's what Alliant would go to. They stated in their proposal or their the information that they provided us that that is one of their alternate co-ops that they go to. So,
yeah, I mean, I'd like to see something outside of the Gallagher family. Obviously, we do employee benefits through Gallagher already. They're a big player out there, but just a little bit of variety would be helpful. And then I wonder if Mesero Alliant could provide, I know it would be a self-insured option, but could they provide a range for a similarly sized district? They've got to have some schools that are smaller than CPS and U46. They can give us some kind of range regarding limits.
I think they can. We can ask them for sure.
Limits and premiums.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the district used to, my only experience with this is the district prior to my arrival was self-insured with health insurance, and we moved to a cooperative with health insurance, and that ended up saving the district some significant dollars. And is also, if you've seen over our premium increases over the last several years, they've been a lot lower than some of our surrounding districts who are self-insured. So I think with the Gallagher thing, I think the fact that you see there's close to 250 schools between their two cooperatives, it's going to be hard to find a cooperative from around the area. Most of the schools, if they're not in Skip or Click, are with Alliant, because that's just within the 3 or 4 local counties. There are some that are self-insured. But my experience has always been that the benefit of a cooperative is that you get to spread some of that risk
Mm-hmm.
across the other school districts to help keep premiums down. So I think we could do a deeper dive and see if we can come up with something else and provide some more information in June. Deanna, would you be willing to, if we needed to have another Zoom meeting about insurance, to participate?
Yeah, no, I would be happy to. I think it would be good to hear from the board in terms of what their overall appetite for risk is, right? Because I think, Kevin, you're laying out very clearly going self-insured to a co-op. Those are very different choices. And once you get to let's say a co-op decision, how you drill down from there in terms of coverage is a different type of decision. So I think, those of you who've been involved with this board and other boards, I think it'd be helpful to get some feedback on your risk tolerance, basically.
Yeah, and I think like Bill brought up, the fact that like, yes, and if you're in a cooperative and there's a lot, it could work against you, but it also, if we ended up getting some cases, we could end up taking on all that load ourselves, all that risk ourselves. So it's kind of risk versus reward. So I think maybe if we could find out another way to explain that or show some examples to the board, maybe that will be helpful in June or July.
Yeah, and I think if this wasn't previously communicated, you know, with the co-ops, you have pretty much set limits that everybody has available, and then you can buy up. But even the set limits, I'm not going to go on record to say what we should or shouldn't do, liability-wise. But you know, the question is, you know, do we need 40 million excess? I don't know that answer, or 30 million excess. You know, but there's just a lot of things we have to consider. And are we paying for too much right now? You know, there's just a lot more information we have to go through.
Gina, you had a thought?
Well, I just greatly appreciate the thoughts that both Deanna and Bill are sharing. This is an area that I absolutely don't know anything about. So I think, Wes, the suggestion of having maybe a subcommittee is a really good one. So that, because everything that Bill and Deanna are saying are things that I don't even know what questions to ask, because this is an area that I don't know anything about. So I appreciate the suggestion of having a subcommittee. And then maybe bringing suggestions back to the board that go in a little bit more in depth for those of us that don't have any background in this area.
Thanks, Gina. I'll be happy to spend as much time with any of the board members, you know, on any discussions, you know, any questions they may have. You know, there's no silly questions, because this is, you know, big exposure, a lot of money, and we want to make the right choice and right decision. But yeah, we also, like we said, with the co-ops, you know, we could be tied in for 3 years, so we want to make sure it's a good choice up front.
I just want to bring up a point of order, though. So I know we're throwing around the words subcommittee and advisory committee. Once the board moves to a subcommittee, those are open meetings, and they're subject to all the open meetings requirements. So if you're looking at a subcommittee, you could have 2 or more board members. You can also invite other members of the community. If you want to have more an advisory council, more streamlined, then you're looking at maybe 1 or 2 board members that are working with staff. So the board can go either way. Any subcommittee is open to public meeting.
I was just going to clarify that with Mr. Smithing, that if we're doing an advisory council, it would run similar to the superintendent advisory council, but we would just start one for insurance. If we call it a board subcommittee, then we would have to post the agendas and have them open to the public, and treat them like a public board meeting.
Well, that's not the end of the world, and if we want to call it an advisory committee, we can do that also. What do some of our peer groups do for this insurance?
All of the schools in the area are either in CLIC or SCIP. Our feeder schools are all in SCIP. A lot of the local high schools are in CLIC, with a couple bigger districts like Morton. I think Proviso, and some of them go with Alliance.
Could we take our standard list and list that out?
Yeah, I think Kristen's ran a majority of them through SCIP. We don't have the full list for CLIC. We're still working on that. And that might be an issue, because sometimes they don't like giving out the list of their clients because they're worried about solicitation. So let me check on that. But we have the list of schools from SCIP.
Yes, I wasn't able to get the list from CLIC.
Yeah, I'd like to point out too that the CLIC renewal with Gallagher, that's the larger co-op, that renewal is July 1st. And so they've already got their renewal. All the member districts have received their renewal. And so, you know, unsure as to how that's, you know, whether or not there's been any increases, decreases, but obviously we're looking for more information. Whereas the SCIP renewal comes up December 31st, which is also the same day as our expiration. through ISIC. But we would just have to give ISIC notification of our intention, if it's all improved, to depart from that co-op.
Is there a benefit, Bill, of the fact that SCIP is not renewing until the end of the year, that'll provide some additional time to see how this kind of COVID shakes out a little bit and its impact on the market?
Yeah, I hate to give you a non-answer. It could go both ways. There's a lot. The market was hardening prior to COVID. So in some areas, like auto insurance, property, so the marketplace in general had already begun to harden. Now, when you put in all the uncertainty over COVID and then potential for federal or state laws or mandates trying to force the insurance industry to pay out claims that maybe they originally weren't intended or written in policy format, then I think there's a lot of dust to settle, but by 12/31, yeah, we'd know a lot more. But again, there's we would be able to go with SCIP at the end of our contract, 12/31. So it'd really be almost like a 7-month policy that we'd do with them.
Well, I'm going to bring up one more time. If you do a committee, a subcommittee, one of the benefits of doing that is if there are expertise in the neighborhood, you could also tap into that. So Bill and Wes, that might be something you might want to consider. If you think we need to broaden and get some questions from attorneys out there, people who are dealing this, a board subcommittee in the short-term interim to solve this one issue might work to your benefit for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that would, I appreciate the thought. I'm not sure if that would work, but I'm not saying I'm not open to it, but this is my day-to-day business. I do not pretend to say I know everything, but all we're going to do is just look at the pros and cons. And I don't even know if so-called experts out there, with all the uncertainty with COVID, would really be able to give us, firm direction. But I could be wrong. So
why don't we start with an advisory council and then bring some feedback to the board here in June and July. And if we need to open it up again, we can open it up possibly to a committee. Would the board be okay with that?
Yeah, I think advisory is fine.
Okay, so we got a lot to tackle with that. And we'll get started on that here. Thank you.